it's almost like it's like we all have an emotional fiber optic cable or emotional artery. And if a lot of our emotional artery or fiber optic cable is blocked or taken up by, if there's a bunch of plaque in my artery or emotional dysfunction in my artery, in that fiber optic cable, if there's blockage in that fiber optic cable, then you will, the only remaining percentage of your emotional bandwidth, your emotional blood flow, will be to, trying to love your spouse or parent your children or work with your employees or staff or company or organization or, junior leaders if you're in the military. So the healthier emotionally you can be, the healthier emotionally, when you start getting an emotional fitness program and you start applying a lot of these things we discuss in the EQ Mafia and my podcast and stuff, cleaning out that emotional dysfunction, that plaque in your artery, then guess what? That frees up that blood flow. It frees up that emotional bandwidth. So now your productivity, in my case, will go up by whatever I said, 70, 80, 90%. Now you can handle more details than you used to be able to handle before. Now you have more relational bandwidth. Now you have more faith bandwidth. Now you have more financial bandwidth. You have more physical fitness bandwidth. You will begin to see, wow, I feel like I have more blood flow to my muscles, to my organs, so now my body can run more efficiently and effective. What is going on, EQ gangsters? So just finished up with one of our first kind of inaugural EQ Mafia membership conversations and discussions. And well, actually it was the very first under the EQ Mafia banner. And we talked about how personality is impacted by one's emotional intelligence and emotional health. And, I went through kind of the DISC model and the different, so the dominant personality, the influencer personality, the steady personality, and the conscientious personality. If you're familiar with the personality plus model, it would be choleric is the dominant, the sanguine is the influencer, the steady personality is the phlegmatic, and the conscientious personality is the melancholy. There are emotionally healthy and emotionally unhealthy versions of each of the personalities. The question is, what are you? How is your emotional intelligence and your emotional health impacting your emotional or your personality? Are you the healthiest version of your personality or not? How is your personality showing up in unhealthy ways? What are some ways that you could be showing up, from a healthier perspective? So my personality, I am the influencer dominant personality. So I'm probably 80-20 or 70-30 influencer to dominant or sanguine to choleric, depending on the model you are familiar with. And as an emotionally needy, emotionally codependent, people-pleasing, addicted version of a sanguine choleric or influencer dominant personality, my personality showed up in some very emotional and unhealthy ways. Here's another aspect, another principle. As an emotionally unhealthy version of your personality, even your strengths can be weaknesses. Even your strengths of your personality can be weaknesses. Then for those of y'all that are familiar with the StrengthsFinder 2.0 model, excellent resource. I use that with a lot of my coaching clients. You can be unhealthy versions. Your strengths can show up in unhealthy ways. So my personality, my strengths, particularly for using the StrengthsFinder 2.0 model, are woo, winning others over, shocking. Woo, positivity, developer, learner, futuristic are my top, handful of strengths there. And how did that come across in unhealthy ways? Well, my woo, winning others over, I was desperate. I was emotionally needy to win others over. It was like, it's hard to explain, man. If you're that self-aware, man, do some self-awareness, some reflection on how do you feel when you're operating in your strengths? If that, because it's one thing to enjoy operating in your strengths. It's one thing to want to operate in your strengths. It's a little bit different to need or be desperate to operate in your strengths. I was operating out of an emotional neediness place, which led me to operate from almost a place of desperation to operate in my strengths. So my woo, this is a running joke from my emotional dysfunction. My woo, you guys, a lot of you know, and in fact, I did an episode on how much I love hugging people, right? I'm a second generation hugger. I learned it from my dad. Well, they called it, a running joke around my circle. Well, and again, it was funny at the time, not realizing it was from a place of emotional dysfunction. People would call it, my friends would call it, hey man, did you get slimed by Noble yet? Right? Did you get your Noble hug yet? Which they would call it getting slimed, because my hugs knew no bounds. I would hug anybody and everybody at any time. And again, I would do it, yes, I love people. There's no doubt about that. Obviously, I love people. But unbeknownst to me, I was doing it from an emotionally needy place. Here's another little dynamic, another little nuance is my love language is physical touch. Well, your love languages can show up in unhealthy, unproductive ways if you are not coming from an emotionally healthy place. Again, in the example of hugs, for example, for me, I would hug anybody and I would hug strangers, y'all. And there have been some of you maybe that are listening to this right now that were a stranger at one point and then you got slimed or hugged by me. And then eventually I would try to turn you into a friend. Again, in many cases from a place of emotional neediness and emotional desperation, not even realizing that I was coming from that place. I had no idea because I had no self-awareness. So here's another example of what your personality can look like with emotional unhealthiness. My personality as the influencer or sanguine personality, if someone gave me 5 details to tackle, to take care of, or 5 emails in my inbox, anything above 5 emails or 5 details with a project, I would immediately begin to, paralysis would set in. No exaggeration, no joke. Paralysis would start to set in. And I literally, I would, if I had 10 emails or 20 or 50 emails or a project with 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 tasks, I would literally stare at my laptop, almost motionless, and not move. Or I would click on every other tab that was open just to be intentionally distract myself, but not consciously, or not consciously, but intentionally distract myself, or look at social media, get on Facebook, get on Instagram, or just really primarily Facebook at the time, just to avoid jumping into the details. I don't know what it was, but like it was literally like details and a whole bunch of subtasks or tasks were like kryptonite to me. As I've gotten healthier emotionally, it has freed up more emotional bandwidth, and now I can handle details now. Now, am I as good at details as, say, maybe my wife is, who is a choleric melancholy or dominant conscientious? No, I'm not at her level of handling details. She like details for her are like oxygen. She swims. She's like a fish in water. She loves details. Now, I'm not at her level of handling details, but I am like 90% increase in productivity and performance in regards to details and how I was before. 90, no exaggeration. I was a negative 10 before, and now I'm probably I'd say a 7 or 8. So what is that in terms of productivity as an entrepreneur, as a business owner? What impact is that? It's massive impact. So how is your, what are the unhealthy aspects of your personality? That's just a couple ways where my emotional unhealthiness showed up in my personality or my strengths that had become weaknesses. So, and I could list a whole laundry list more different areas of strengths and weaknesses. Another one, as a people pleasing addict and influencer / sanguine personality, I almost couldn't stop my insatiable desire to get everybody to like me, to please everybody in my circle, in the room, in the meeting, on the Zoom, in the web conference. And I had no idea how exhausting that was emotionally. Now, thankfully, I don't have that. Now, I'm also not going to lie. I probably think that there's probably maybe 5%, maybe 10% of the people pleasing that I've still got to work through and root out. But I will tell you, if I had to put a number to it, I am probably 90 to 95% less of a people pleaser than I was 3 to 4 years ago, having since been on this emotional fitness program. So we talked about some of those dynamics in our EQ Mafia, which is now open. So for those of you all that feel like you're ready and ready for that next step, or ready to add emotional fitness to your life, to your lifestyle, and which I strongly encourage you and recommend, by the way, to add an emotional fitness program to your life. It will change your life. It will transform your life. Right now, there are, I almost guarantee, ways that you are being limited by your emotional health without even being aware of it, without even realizing it. And if you're ready to start discovering and tackling some of those areas, check out eqgangster.com/mafia, eqgangster.com/mafia. I wanted to share some of those insights and thoughts and things that we discussed tonight. The goal is not to change your personality. In fact, that was another question that somebody asked me recently. I think it was on a podcast. Noble, how has your personality changed as a result of growing your EQ? And the interesting thing for me, I am still an influencer dominant. I'm still ID, 80, 20, 70, 30 influencer to dominant. I'm still sanguine choleric, but I'm a much, much emotionally healthier version of a sanguine choleric or influencer dominant than I was before. I'm not coming from a place of people-pleasing addiction, emotional neediness, emotional codependence. I don't need people to like me anymore. That's not even on my brain anymore. If someone likes me or gets value from me, great. From me being me, great. If someone doesn't, great. If someone does the haterade before, that's another one. Oh my goodness, I didn't say this one yet. If someone gave me some haterade before, they were throwing some hate one steak sauce at me, I would absolutely crumble. It would be soul crushing if someone doused a little hate one steak sauce on me. I'd be Dunzini. I'd be THU. And now it doesn't impact me at all. I will look for some truth, that there's some elements of truth in somebody's hateful or negative comment. I will have the objectiveness now to be able to look at that haterade from a place of objectivity, but not from a place of emotional neediness. So I can sift out now any potential truth in that hateful comment or negative comment without it impacting my identity and who I am. That negative comment or that positive comment does not define who I am. It does not validate and affirm me. Either way, positive or negative. Someone recently told me, I met on the coaching course, told me, man, Noble, she said a really, it's very positive. Noble, you're a gem. Your smile is contagious, I think is something like that. And no doubt, man, it felt great. It made me feel really good, but it did not cross over into my identity anymore. Before, either a positive comment or a negative comment would almost define me. It would become my identity because I got my identity in and from other people instead of, for me, my personal relationship with Jesus. Now, and that's how, for me, my EQ impacted my faith and my relationship with the Lord. So some people may say, oh, well, EQ doesn't impact my faith. Well, I almost guarantee you your EQ impacts your faith without you even realizing it. And that was one example of how my EQ impacted my faith, is because, and I love Jesus and Jesus is my identity. And all the while acting out and behaving from my place of emotional neediness and people-pleasing addiction. And so now I can truly say that my relationship with the Lord and my relationship with Jesus is my identity, not some person or praise or hate. It's fine either way. If folks are free to express their thoughts and opinions, and if I add value to them, great. If God willing, I don't take value away from anybody. That's definitely not my MO. So anyway, those are just some ways, some discussion, some conversation around how EQ impacts directly both personality and strengths. And again, EQ, my growth in emotional health and intelligence, has not changed my personality. It is, if anything, it has calmed me down. It has made me a more calm, chill, mature, stable, predictable ID, influencer dominant personality, or sanguine choleric, which is tremendous. Now, okay, here's a couple of the thoughts I want to share with you all. Another way that I look at it, and I talked about it tonight, was it's almost like it's like we all have an emotional fiber optic cable or emotional artery. And if a lot of our emotional artery or fiber optic cable is blocked or taken up by, in the artery example, by the junk in our artery, man, I just had the word in my head, plaque in the artery. If there's a bunch of plaque in my artery or emotional dysfunction in my artery, in that fiber optic cable, if there's blockage in that fiber optic cable, then you will, the only remaining percentage of your emotional bandwidth, your emotional blood flow, will be to, trying to love your spouse or parent your children or work with your employees or staff or company or organization or junior leaders if you're in the military. So the healthier emotionally you can be, the healthier emotionally, when you start getting an emotional fitness program and you start applying a lot of these things we discuss in the EQ Mafia and my podcast and stuff, cleaning out that emotional dysfunction, that plaque in your artery, then guess what? That frees up that blood flow. It frees up that emotional bandwidth. So now your productivity, in my case, will go up by whatever I said, 70, 80, 90%. Now you can handle more details than you used to be able to handle before. Now you have more relational bandwidth. Now you have more faith bandwidth. Now you have more financial bandwidth. You have more physical fitness bandwidth. You will begin to see, wow, I feel like I have more blood flow to my muscles, to my organs, so now my body can run more efficiently and effective. It's exactly how it has worked with me in my own emotional venous system, arterial system, if you will. I've got more emotional blood flow, more emotional bandwidth to handle more that God wants me to do. So now, using a biblical reference here, Matthew 25:14-30, there's it's the entrepreneur section of the Bible. The entrepreneur goes on a quick vacay to Fiji or wherever that entrepreneur traveled to, and he had 3 employees. He gave one 5 talents or $5,000, another 2 talents or $2,000, another 1 talent or $1,000, based on their ability, not to get into it. But before, what I was doing is, I feel like God's given me 5 talents or $5,000, five talents. But I was acting like the 1 talent guy. I would bury my 5 talents in the backyard. Finally, for the first time in my life, after 4 years of a consistent emotional fitness program, I finally feel like I can be a 5 talent steward, acting like a 5 talent steward, giving God a double return, a return on his investment in me, 100% return on his investment in me, which what is that worth to me? From acting like a 1 talent guy after getting 5 talents, acting like a 1 talent guy my entire life, being scared to bring my gifts and talents to bear to the world, and now finally being a 5 talent guy, being able to bring all the gifts and talents and abilities that God has given me to make the world a better place. Are you joking me right now? What is that worth to me? Y'all, that's priceless to me. That's millions and that's priceless to me. Priceless. So, wanted to share those thoughts with you all. Again, if you're ready to take that next step to begin an emotional fitness program, check out eqgangster.com/mafia. eqgangster.com/mafia. And think about how your emotional intelligence is impacting your personality and your strengths.